Anything specific on the agenda? One thing I would like to add to it, and we can, I'd rather do it under discussion items after Nancy makes her presentation, but we did bring up at the last meeting, I think, a general desire on our part to have us treated the same as neighborhood associations whenever it came to developments that were within an NROD. And I'd like to have a further discussion about that to make sure that this becomes considered. It'll have to go through a process. It probably ended up being at a study session of the city commission to make that move, but
would you state that again?
When the development NROD, natural resource overlay.
Right.
Neighborhood associations, when a developer comes in with a major project, they talk to the neighborhood associations, are required to do so, as I understand it.
You're right.
And we would like to see, we don't want to hear all the developers, but we do want to hear those that have areas that are within the natural resource overlays. And
right.
So we'd like to have that same level of communication. And I think that came up at the last meeting.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll do that more as a more formal discussion session there on 4 after Nancy makes her presentation. That's okay, Jim. Well, no, that's okay because we made the decision.
That's right. Yeah,
So
I think we can live with that.
And I don't think Nancy qualifies as a person who's going to necessarily make public comments, so we can skip 3 and go on to the discussion items, in which case you will make comments, right?
I'm not entirely sure. You keep saying presentation, and I'm a little concerned about that, simply because I didn't come with a real presentation. It was very vague and more about kind of our process, and I thought maybe, sound like you might have some questions about the code enforcement process. So I do have a very grand presentation that I take around to neighborhood associations once in a while, but it is full of things that you're probably not interested in at all. But I find fascinating, such as garbage. So,
Okay.
so I'm not really here to talk about garbage. I'm here to talk about code enforcement. And that, is that picking it up? I feel like it's like echoing in my ear.
Yeah, it sounds like it is.
The mic should be pointed at you.
Oh, I just pointed at your mouth.
Okay.
There you go.
So I'm assuming that it is more about process.
Well, okay. I guess I don't know what exactly happened, but in any case, I have a question in terms of dealing with code enforcement. We've had problems at various of our apartments and probably some of the houses too when they actually are dumping garbage down hillsides and so forth. And I doubt if there's any monitoring of that going on because it's out of view. Now, my understanding is the code enforcement is primarily driven by complaint. And I'm wondering how we should deal. I mean, there's some areas where it's really bad, and below some of the apartments in Newell Creek Canyon, for example, where things accumulate for a long period of time. And I'm sure that's in other places in Oregon City. That might be one point to talk in terms of the code enforcement.
It gives me a good place to start to figure out kind of what it is that you really wanted to get me here for, to find out about our process.
I guess
I can give you an example.
What was the concern that was?
Well, we had a couple of public comments that revolved around it, and kind of a few of us didn't really have a general idea of how the actual code enforcement process works. So I think what you're talking was kind of one of the lead-ins to that, so that we could then ask more questions after the fact.
Perfect. Good segue. Thank you so much, Trent. Code enforcement is 100% reactive. We are not proactive. We have not been directed to be proactive. The only thing that we are proactive about is signage. And that's going to be primarily signage that's in the public right-of-way. Everything else is complaint-driven. It takes a citizen complaint to really to get logged and for us to address it. Certainly, if it's something that's staring us right in the face at a moment, that we're going to address it, as well as whatever it is that we are currently out in that area addressing. So complaints come in a variety of ways, and they come in through the Go request. They come in, the majority of them come in over the phone, believe it or not. And some walk straight on into the building. We respond to anonymous complaints. And these are allegations. This is not something, somebody did anything wrong. Now, I'm not talking about illegal dumpings per se, but the type of things, the number one complaint in the city is residential parking. That's the thing that people concern the most about is all of the cars in their neighborhood. In case nobody knew that, that's the number one complaint in the city. And so once we receive a complaint, it gets logged, it's an allegation. We, our intake person, Autumn Wilson, she's amazing, and she schedules that. She kind of handles everybody's schedule. We're usually booked out about 2 weeks in advance from responding to anything. We leave a little bit of time each day to be able to pick up those things that rise to the top suddenly that are high priorities. And those are going to be our illegal dumpings, depending upon where they're at and what they are. Anything that's going to end up in the river, end up in the storm drain, certainly those rise to a higher priority. A lot of our transient issues because of all the drug paraphernalia and stuff like that, especially in our natural areas, we're worried about families and children and their safety. Those rise to a higher priority. But otherwise, everything kind of comes in, gets cataloged a little bit on how we're going to respond to them, prioritized, and then assigned out. And they're all allegations. We don't know if any of the stuff's true or not. The people are saying about their neighbors. We often are just the peacekeepers in a neighborhood, some place for somebody to vent to, so they don't go punch their neighbor out about that barking dog. We do noise. We do anything really, and even if it's not a violation, if you feel that uncomfortable about talking to your neighbor and you want to vent to somebody, I'm your gal, and I might even go talk to your neighbor for you and say, hey, isn't it so much nicer to be the king in your castle? And maybe what can we do so everyone can get along here? And that's just kind of the role that I've had here for the last 20 years. So I know Doug, it's nice to meet the rest of you. Does that kind of help a little bit? So once we go out and we confirm an allegation is either founded or unfounded, it gets logged as unfounded. And closed. And then, of course, if we continue to get complaints regarding the exact same thing, we will log it again. We might reopen that same thing and go out and try and figure it out. Now, what is it that they are talking about? Where exactly is that? Maybe we have to set an appointment to say, you know what, you don't get to be anonymous anymore. Now you're gonna have to put your name on it and show us what it is you're talking about, because code enforcement's a real partnership between the citizens and the city. And often it takes the citizens to help us do our job, because you know exactly what's bothering you or exactly what embankment that's over. I could tromp around all day in my boots in the canyon and may not come across what's bothering Doug. So it's really important that people are also available to maybe show us or tell us what's going on, so we can get out there and address it if it's not 100% completely obvious. Once we verify that an allegation is indeed a violation, we will send a notice to, depending on what it is, we may reach out to we have a lot of experts in the city that help us do our job. Pete's one of them. We often send things to Pete. Pete, hey, this is about some street trees, and how many were they supposed to plant, and how many of them did they pay to not put in, and there's some plan from some development somewhere that he's going to have to dig up and say, this person's supposed to have a tree, they bought their way out of one, they replanted, they did whatever, because I can just go out and cite everyone without a tree, but some of them are legal to not have one. Right. So we come back to Pete and say, Pete, tell us what it is we're supposed to do, and then we'll form a letter to say, by the way, usually it's a voluntary compliance letter. It's really warm and fuzzy about, hey, we received a complaint regarding X. If X is happening, please stop it, or please call Pete, and help go through the process of correcting it. Really, everyone's a citizen and everyone's a taxpayer, and everyone deserves to have the same respect, regardless of where you're at with your neighbor and who you're combating, or whatever it is that drives you into filing it or not. And so we work people through a process. And then people say what he needs to have done, we'll send out a letter, we'll follow up with Pete, or Pete will follow up with us and say, working with the property owner, they're gonna do whatever, and we kind of just let them go through their process.
Right.
Pete notifies us and says, they're not doing anything, it really does have to go in. And so we'll send a little more stern letter. And they always go to the property owners. We always work with the property because the property owner has ultimate control over their property. And that one just comes to trees. I mean, it could be anything. And if you have tenants there and there's lots of garbage or whatever, if the tenant won't clean it up, the property owner is the one that gets the fine in the end. So we deal primarily with property owners. If they are not listening to Pete, we send out probably another letter that's a little bit more formal. It's called a notice of violation. It's a little bit more formal. It's in duplicate. It's pretty much all filled out, but it has like kind of the legal responsibility at the bottom that says, you know, by the way, there's a $300 fine that comes with violations. We don't levy fines, the judge levies fines. We don't have the ability, no violations have a fine. Everything in the municipal code has the ability to have a $300 fine per day that it goes uncorrected. So that could be from Pete's first letter, could be from the first time we notify them. But everybody gets due process. And if they don't want to do it, they get to go through the entire process, clear up to the court day, hire attorneys, reset it a million times. I'm working one that's been about 2.5 years probably, but they're gonna put that tree in. So it's their right to do it, and the person who maybe brought it to our attention doesn't necessarily get to know all of this stuff that's going on because it's a legal matter at this point, and it's not public information. It's public information once it's closed. People call in and get status updates of where we're at with something. And we'll tell them we're in this process or this process, but we're not going to say we sent these people a really nasty letter or whatever. We don't usually get into any of that. And I don't think any of them are really nasty. They're just facts. Does that help at all? Kind of explain what we do anyway, or our process. And depend upon what the violation is, you know, we're really good about working with the public and identifying when we show up someplace of when I look at something that needs to be corrected, you kind of look at it as, okay, I work for 45 to 50 hours a week. If I only did this, you know, if I could correct this on my days off and after hours, how long would it take me? And then I go the next step of say, how long would it take, you know, my mother to do this? Or if she didn't have any help. So we try to be very, very reasonable depending on what it is. But we also, people have to show progress. So we might give them a deadline, but if there's zero progress being made, we may escalate things faster, or if they're really working with us and communicating. I mean, I have some that I've held hands with for a very, very long time. I'm in a really unique position where I get to meet a lot of people, deliver not such a great message that they want to hear, but I make a lot of friends. So it's pretty good job. Does anybody have any questions about any of that?
How many people are part of the code enforcement program or?
There is a total of 5 of us. So there's myself, we have an intake, which is much like, you know, I won't want to compare it to a 911 operator, but, you know, she takes in all of the emails, the go requests, the phone, the counter, just to make sure everything gets logged and processed. People come up to me all the time and say, hey, can you do this? I hope that I don't forget something when it's kind of off the cuff that way. I try and take notes and write things down and go back the following workday and log it, but it can be a challenge to do sometimes. So it's really important to try and stick to the process so that everything is kind of treated the same and nothing gets escalated or bumped just because of the way that you were able to get your complaint filed. So there's that, and there's 5 of us. Sorry, I lost track of that. There's 5 of us. It's Autumn. Dave Mueller has been with me for 13 years. We just replaced Trina Payton with Zach Knutson. He is on today Wednesday, day 8 he finished. Oh, wow. So I was spending a lot of time with him on downtown parking. And who else? And Jesse Rowe is our downtown parking enforcement officer. He's primarily, or he is 100% downtown parking and like Bluff area parking. So not a whole lot of real code enforcement per se, dealing with private property nuisance abatement type issues, but it'll be nice when we get Zach up to speed and we can get caught up a little bit.
What's the most common form between go request, calling on the phone, or writing something on a website? What's the most common way people get in touch with you?
I think the phone, because people really want to be anonymous. They really do. They don't want, and I had somebody come in the other day and say that go request, you have to create an account. And they're really concerned about there being a footprint somewhere about that account and the retaliation that they'll get from their neighbors. And they shouldn't have to be worried about that. And it's better just let us be the bad guy. You can say whatever you want. We're going to go out and verify it or not. And then we're basically the complainant at that time. We've confirmed the allegation. We witnessed it. Yes, Bill.
One of the reasons we asked you to come was a lady was here last meeting.
Last meeting, yeah, in February.
But has had many interactions with you and your department, and if she says anything at this point, the neighbor knows who it is and there is retaliation. And, you know, Doug started explaining the process the best he could to her, and she goes, I know, but none of that matters, because even if it was anonymous, this guy would know who it is.
Well, and she
So
said
she's in a real jam, because it sounded pretty legit.
Well, and she had said that she couldn't give an anonymous account, but I think she might have been trying to do it online, is what it sounds like.
Right.
Because she wasn't doing
Very
it
possibly.
on the phone, yeah.
I mean, if she's doing it online, or I've never used Go Request, so I don't know. And Autumn mans that and takes, logs all that stuff into our own database. But most people call. But at the end of the day, it's not rocket science to figure out who complained. Depending on what it is, depending on what it is. And sometimes I will tell people, I said, they're not going to hear it from me, but if your neighbor shows up on your door and you don't have a good poker face, that is not my fault. You got to work on that. So, it's true, though a lot of people do, if somebody came up to your door, I mean, would you have deer in the headlights, look like a deer in the headlights, and would they know? 9 times out of 10 they might. Or they can assume. People are going to assume whatever they want. There's nothing you can do about it. You don't have to admit to it. They didn't hear it from us. Our records are closed. They're confidential until our cases are closed. So they're not going to get any of that. But it's very careful to talk about how descriptive something might be, because that is what is going into the record when you call on the phone. And if it says, when I look over my neighbor's fence, I can see whatever, and you only have one neighbor you share a fence line with, ta-da!
Hey, there I am.
You're gonna know, and there's nothing, people don't have to be nice. There's no rules about that. I can't make people be good neighbors, be good drivers, be good parents, be good pet owners. Things I get asked to do every day, I have no control over. But at the end of the day, we do try and keep everybody anonymity as best as possible. And if you've, depending on where you live and your property line, like you said, you only have 2 neighbors that would know that you had something in your backyard. Well, okay, through the process of elimination, one of them told on you.
Because in my case, I'm gonna fix it. I'm not gonna go shoot their house up.
Well, and and then some people can be bully and be retaliatory, and it's the nice thing about that is we have things documented. Usually they've done that to us too. They come in and try and bully their way through the office, and believe me, it doesn't work. So, if we feel that somebody may be in danger, we'll probably, if we know who they are, we might try and reach out to them and say, hey, by the way, your neighbor was in here, and hold your poker face, don't answer the door, till we get this thing resolved. And we try and talk people off the ledge as well. Do you really want to know? What good does it do to know if a neighbor complained about you or not? You've been living next to, often you've been living next to this person for 25 years, your kids grew up together, you went to school, you did PTA, you did whatever, they really like you. Obviously, they don't feel comfortable talking to you about something that's uncomfortable. So does it really matter who it is? Let's just fix it, it's a violation, I've already verified it. So I can be the bad guy and people can talk bad about me. I'm okay. I've got broad shoulders. I can handle that.
I gotta take issue with something you said, however.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is, I know that nobody reported the fact that the meter went out on my car, and code enforcement came and gave me a ticket. So you're not.
Well, no, proactive. We do proactive parking. You know that.
Oh, yeah.
Downtown parking enforcement, excuse me, because we kind of separate downtown parking from code enforcement. Parking is underneath code enforcement. It's part of the municipal code. That is proactive. When it gets into going and knocking on doors and talking to people, you know, it starts with signage that's proactive, and the rest is simply
Complaint
reactive.
driven.
Believe me, I had somebody ask me about this the other day. I was in a meeting with some attorneys, and they're wanting to know how I do stuff. I'm like, I just drive around with blinders on. I could go into a neighborhood and never come out if I got into the weeds that much, you know. And if everyone's getting along with their neighbors, unless it's a health hazard or something like that, why should I make it my personal? But the city hasn't told me to do that. Why would I put my neck out to do that? Make it my personal mission to, you know, penalize people or go after them. I mean, I get to meet a lot of nice, really nice people. But.
I'm going to give an example. There was
Yes.
2 years ago, somebody came in to make an application at the Metro Enhancement Board for a grant to have kids come up.
Sorry, Doug, can
Oh,
you
yeah,
make sure?
excuse me. To have a person came up to the Metro Enhancement Board with an application. It wasn't approved, but to have kids come in and clean up debris. When they bought their property, they didn't realize the extent of their property line. Their property line abutted one of the apartments on Malala, and they realized then this garbage was all on their property, but they didn't produce it. It was the apartment complex that did it. So if somebody dumps something on somebody else's property, is that a violation of city code? I know obviously it is for public property, but how about
It's
for
an
private?
illegal dumping, yeah, certainly. It's
Okay.
certainly an illegal dumping, but at the end of the day, I can dig through all the tires and, you know, putrescible waste that I want to and not find any evidence of who
Right.
actually did it. So at the end of the day, when it's on your property, when you own a lot of property, you're responsible to maintain it and police it and fence it if you don't want anyone on it. And you're also required to clean up after whatever's been dumped there. The city doesn't come in and clean up on private property. The city's gonna notify, I'm gonna come out, we're gonna dig through it, we'll cite somebody, but we don't haul it all away.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
But the point is, given what's happened there might be evidence of people living in the apartments, their names are on something or something of that nature.
I
So-
like pizza boxes, because they're delivery, it has their address right on it. They're the best. You find a pizza box, ooh. Good to know.
I had to finally post signs on my private driveway because we actually caught a couple in a pickup with a load of garbage. Came onto our property looking for a place to dump it.
Anytime that you have some green space that doesn't have a camera on it, there is the potential to have something like that, or to have a camp, or when we had a public park where somebody's backyard backed up to it and they put in a motocross track. I don't know if you remember that, Doug, you might have been a commissioner back pre your mayor days, before you being a mayor. So out of sight, we're not there. The only way to access that area was probably through somebody's property. The neighbors finally got tired of all the park. I mean, they started like having races and there's no parking. It's this little tiny street, but it backed up into a huge section of a park that was inaccessible to anybody else any other way. And they had the best track ever that they did have to take out and mitigate that. And I'm sure parks may have even made them put a fence in to separate that. But, you know, anytime you have any type of land, unfortunately, if you're not monitoring it on a regular basis, you really don't know what's going on there. And then pretty soon somebody's encroaching on that. Pretty soon somebody's mowing it and maintaining it, and pretty soon it's theirs. So there's been a few cases like that in the city. Has nothing to do with us. They were dumping their garbage on somebody else's property for 10 years. one of these subdivisions, well, guess what? There's some really weird, funky lot lines now because they sued and they got to keep their dump pile and became part of that person's property because they've been the one maintaining it. So, nothing to do with us, a private issue, but again, I meet a lot of really nice people with interesting stories in this position. Did that help you at all? I mean, illegal dumping is illegal dumping. It's illegal. It's not okay. We all know it's not okay. Is there anything I can do about it sometimes? Not often. Sometimes, yes. We're pretty good at it. We prosecute everything that we can. We absolutely go out and catch and prosecute anything that we can because it's not okay. It's not okay what people are doing to the environment. It's not okay to leave it on somebody else to deal with. If it's on public land, we clean it up, but we don't on private property.
Mm-hmm. And you also work with the building department and the planning department on enforcement of the certain zoning and building.
Anything that they need to have done. Yeah, so they're, again, the experts. If it's a building violation that comes into us, we don't know if it's a building violation. You know, you check you check the computer system, the city's system to see if you can figure out if they have a permit or not, but I usually refer it straight over to building because chances are they have a small department. They know if there's a permit there or not. It sounds familiar. It's something they're working on. You know, going out and doing inspections on a regular basis just to confirm. You know, they go out and visit the site. Either if they don't have a permit, make sure that they get one. If they don't get one, then they refer it over to us. Again, that's where that first letter comes from us, that real nice, warm and fuzzy letter about, hey, you know, please do what the building official tells you to do and do it in 7 days so I don't have to get involved. It's kind of the letter.
Yeah, make contact. Right?
Make contact, do the right thing, do what you're supposed to, because none of us want to come out and penalize our citizens. They're our citizens, they own property, they're taxpayers. They believe that they own property and can do what they want with it. Sometimes that's building without permits, sometimes that's burying garbage, sometimes that's, I won't even get into all the crazy things I've seen, but yeah, you just don't know, and you have to kind of walk them through the process. You have to get them to warm up to you, that I'm a human, you're a human, can we just communicate as humans? Instead of, I'm the city, and I'm picking on you as a property owner. You have to get over that hurdle first, which is really important. I think our staff is really, really good at doing that. If anybody ever comes in here, there is a process, and I would always recommend, you know, call the Code Enforcement Division. If you need a little bit more understanding, we're happy to give it to you, but it may not come in online. Those online complaints, there's simply a generic response goes out, it's closed, it's then entered into our database. And it comes in the order that is logged into our database and assigned out by priority. And so for an update or something like that, you definitely have to call in to find that. And you just say, hey, I'm looking for a status update to this property. Know what property you're talking about. That way you don't have to give too much information. You can still stay anonymous. And if we can tell you what we're doing, we will. If we can't, we will say, we are in litigation over this, and we won't.
And I can say personally that in 13 years, the vast majority of things that have come before us in planning as code enforcement is resolved without having to actually go to court. I think in two occasions in my.
So last year, 2017, we did just under, it was like 1,880 something complaints that came through. Of those that we looked into, few are closed as unfounded. There's a lot of first visits, second visits, third inspection, fourth inspection, a lot of hand holding, very time consuming. Out of those, 26 citations were issued. That's 26 tickets to the municipal court. Of those 26 citations, 3 resulted in a trial. We're really good at getting things resolved, and sometimes it takes getting them to court to say, hi, I'm so glad you'll finally talk to me. I'm glad the judge is making you do it, but I'm a really nice person. You want to step outside? First, we'll go talk about this, and then we can come back in and tell the judge we don't really need her. And everyone's like, oh yeah, I should have called you a long time ago. I mean, don't ignore our letters, don't ignore our mail. People will come in and probably tell you the exact opposite of that. We're not helping them, but maybe we're picking on them. Please advise them to come and talk to us. Often they've never even spoken with us. So that's a good reminder for people as well. Anything else?
We've heard more from people that are the complainers.
And that's hearsay. No. Objection. No.
Right. You know, in both cases, I personally know that there's activity, but I don't know whether it's legal or whatever. But the only two that I can remember
Yeah, the ones
We're
that come before
complainers.
us. Yeah.
are Kanema related.
Yeah.
Yep, Kanema's a hotbed for things, for sure.
Last place on earth you should build a house.
Right.
Although a lot of
The,
people are living in houses that were built 100 years ago.
Kanema
Living in houses
experiences
built
a lot of growing pains, you know, the history in the old homes with the new and the infill lots, and it's growing pains, and people don't really have any control over that. That's people's private property and they have the right to do that. It's not what people want to hear.
Well,
Doesn't
let
really
me
do
clarify
us,
my
but-
point about Kanema, and that is, Doug said, well, there's a lot of 100-year-old houses there, and yes, there are. And as they're sick of hearing about, I looked at one real seriously, so that I know a little bit about it, and my opinion is virtually all the good spots that you can build on with some relative degree of assurance of stability have been built on. So the infill now is probably going to be focused more on places that are going to fall into that geologic hazard and NROD area and stuff like that, which is going to lead to more people downhill worrying about what's going on. That's all.
No, I think you're absolutely right. That's what happens when you take a rectangular plat and you superimpose it on an ancient landslide. There's a lot of lots of record there that are legally platted and can legally be built on, provided you meet those very, very stringent engineering standards. So,
Yeah, with the scarcity of buildable land
yeah,
and the costs going up like they are,
yeah.
it becomes viable to hire a geotechnical consultant.
I just wanted to add that with respect to water quality and erosion control, there's Public Works has an erosion control program that is staffed by John Burrell, who's and he will sometimes go out when there's a violation as well, but with you guys, right?
When we receive a complaint regarding erosion control, we generally send it straight over to Public Works. You know, we received one not that long ago, last week, 2 weeks ago, from a resident in Kanema, and they took pictures and everything, and they sent them to me, and I'm like, I'm just gonna send these to Alita and the engineering counter over there, and you know, she responded back with, that is their approved plan, that is supposed to drain that way, that's on the plan. I'm like, case closed, perfect.
Yeah. If there's a permit, right?
Everything was done legally. It was it's a home that's currently under construction.
What
You know,
about mud on the street from construction projects?
We send that is, again, it goes through engineering. John Burrell, he is the erosion control engineer. He's supposed to be going out and monitoring these construction projects and making sure that they aren't tracking that road out, or that dirt out onto the road. If he cannot get someone to comply, he's pretty good at doing it. He usually doesn't have to get me involved. But he certainly gives us our shoulder tap and says, tag, you're it, you know? And then we say, do exactly what John Burrell tells you to do and do it immediately so we don't have to cite you to court. Really, each department manages what they do. What their specialty is. If it has to do with building and construction and those violations, that all goes through the building department. Mike Roberts and his team is great to work with. When Mike cannot get you to the table to do the right thing, he's gonna say, we're gonna have to refer you to formal code enforcement actions. Those types of enforcement actions escalate a little faster because Mike's already sent him 3 or 4 or 5 letters. He's already had the inspector out there several times. There's no reason for me to ask somebody to do something 5 more times and give them more deadlines. I usually give them one notice that says, this is your deadline and here's your court date. And that's it. And it's pretty effective. I mean, planning will often say, wow, that citation like cures everything. So it can be a little bit painful. I certainly recommend that they do exactly what the department with the authority over whatever it is they're trying to do advises that they do, and whatever is on their approved plans. If it's something that they didn't pull permits for, Mike's great. Planning's great. Elita's super nice. You know, get them to the table, get them on track, how to mitigate what the problem is, how to get them into compliance. Most of that is done without ever getting us involved. And I'm talking about our almost 1,900, things that we investigated last year. Most of that had nothing to do with those departments. Those are just everything else that bugged the citizens of this city.
It's nothing money won't cure.
Solid waste, by the way, is the second #1 complaint in the city. First is residential parking, not downtown parking, Doug. Does that kind of help explain kind of what we do?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions that I won't deflect
Well, we
to the department?
appreciate you coming out.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's been very
Thank you so much.
informative, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call. Usually when I leave a meeting, somebody like slips me an address they want me to look into. And we're happy to do it. Again, I hope that it makes it into the system the next time I'm at work so that it gets tracked and logged. Logged and tracked
I do
appropriately.
have a property. It's on South Main Street.
Yeah.
Be sure to send it to her. Don't announce it publicly.
They're gonna know who complained. This is on the record.
I don't even care.
Sounds like a county address.
No, I'm
No?
thinking of a city property
Oh,
that we've
right.
all got a lot of interest in time in.
Okay.
Sounds like a Pete issue.
It's a joke. It's a joke.
When in doubt, call planning.
Yeah. So I do have a question for you. Generally, we refer people to Clackamas County Soil and Water Conservation District when they have questions about, it's primarily about invasive species type things and how to remove them. I don't know what each of your expertise is in providing anybody that. We don't really tell people how you have to remove it because I don't, whatever thing you're going to use on your land is up to you, and between you and your neighbor, if it's gonna bleed onto your neighbor's land. We can't tell you, I advise people to check with your insurance agent, check with your attorney, cover your bases. But do you guys offer anything in the way of outreach to people who are trying to figure out like low cost ways to really battle some invasive species, or?
Well, it would
It's
be
on private property too, it's
Yeah,
private property
it would be a major duplication of
of their efforts.
Clackamas NRCS, and they do a great job. They really
We
do.
refer them there, but I feel like seems like,
It's an unbelievable topic that there is no answer for any one species. One easy answer.
well, May through September, you know what the #1 complaint is?
Weeds.
Overgrown vegetation, we like to call it.
Even weeds have needs.
Yes, exactly. I was just curious if you guys had any type of outreach or help that you provided individually or as a group, or
Well, we had a-
other educational
Had some
things?
discussion, but nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a presentation from Sam Leininger at the district, from Sam Leininger at the district, who, kind of gave us a presentation about what they respond to, but they're very open to all kinds of calls and
No, they are.
can direct you to resources and and educational stuff about your particular problem?
I was a licensed supervisor in Colorado for rangeland and industrial property and right-of-way, invasive species control.
Yeah.
It's becoming I think, a larger topic.
Right.
Anyway,
Too
thanks
late.
for having me.
Yes, thanks
Thank
very much
you.
for coming.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, been great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, that's great. Take it easy. So I added the other item that
Right.
you wanted to add,
The,
developer meetings with NRC for Natural Resource Overlay District applications.
and yeah, what I did want to do is have that discussion just followed by follow off the chart there
Right.
in terms of I'm coming back now to the recommendation that we made to have us involved in the land use process at that level.
Laura did, tell me about that briefly at the beginning of last week. And kind of ties into, we have the code open at the moment right now for various things that are transportation related. And then we're gonna have it open again this year because of the Equitable Housing Project, so we're looking at that. And then, I don't know if Laura mentioned this, but one of my staff communications to you is to let you know that the city has applied for a planning grant to Metro. These are called the Metro 2040 planning grants, and they're available to do land use planning and zoning amendments and that sort of thing. So the principal priority, we applied for $250,000 to redo the comprehensive plan. We also applied for $100,000 to do the regional center plan, so the mixed use downtown, looking at that again, the area. And $100,000 for a wetland inventory. So the criteria for these planning grants is spelled out by Metro, and then they would award them throughout the region based on how those projects line up with their suitability criteria. And they will award those if there are more. Once they fund the suitable ones, then if there's leftover funds, they will fund the ones that are not quite as suited. So we'll see how that pans out, because it was a last minute rush to get those applications in. So, and if that pans out, then we'll be using that money for code rewrites and that sort of thing. And notification is a fairly simple thing to do. Writing in requirements for developers to meet with particular groups is basically a code amendment to Chapter 1750. It's an administrative code amendment. And I think it's something that would have to be discussed at the planning commission level, and then it goes to the city commission and that sort of thing. Probably part of a series of other code amendments as well. So, yeah. But I think.
Well, right now, they're looking at their, forget the terminology that they're using, but they're looking at the variations in terms of size of the size of lots, the size of developable lots in terms of the being within the zone and so forth. And the planning commission just discussed that and has made specific recommendations related to the plan.
Yeah.
But we won't be able to get on that docket because they're well underway. But we really like to see this pursued, because we get these notifications and I try to look at them, I try to understand them, but it would probably be easier if, it would be better actually, if this body as a whole took a look at these things with the developer themselves.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely a beneficial thing for them to meet with the neighborhood associations prior to filing a land use application, just to answer questions of all kinds, not necessarily ones that have to do with zoning and development, but also, you know, what's the likelihood of your project happening, you know, what to.
Maybe it,
Yeah.
maybe it could be here and be a joint meeting of,
Yeah, I mean, with the neighborhood associations, they have a requirement to meet within the boundary of the neighborhood association. But
I guess
here,
we'd have to go there.
yeah, that's different. For this, it would probably be,
One benefit of this specifically, though, it'd be recorded.
Yeah, on the record, yeah.
oh,
it would be
yeah,
on the record.
but, from a developer's perspective, we only meet 6 times a year.
that's,
Well,
And that's,
but the neighborhood associations only meet, how many times a year?
we only meet 6 times.
well, once,
Well,
no,
10,
12,
12, okay, yeah.
But the neighborhood
occasionally
association,
10.
the neighborhood associations only meet 4 times a year.
But that's if you're trying to get a project through and you.
Yeah,
Well,
it's-
no, you get-
Permits.
we have to
it's-
think about the language of the code.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be at a point where, I guess what I should ask is what kind of development specifically would go before the neighborhood associations?
Anything that is a significant land use application with and they're listed specifically, so all site plan and design review applications on non-residential properties, all subdivisions, any planning commission level decision like a variance or a conditional use, annexations, zone changes, anything that's what we would call a type 2 or above, with the exception of minor partitions, which are splitting the lot into 2, that doesn't have to meet with,
Right.
yeah.
And the only ones we would see would be the ones that are within
The
Enron's.
Enron, yeah.
And I mean, most of those things are 120-day notification period.
Well, the meeting requirement is required prior to a complete application. So you have to show evidence that you met with that group before your application can be formally reviewed.
And we have no authority. I mean, we can make recommendations probably in the process, but I don't believe we have any authority designated. to
Not
us.
currently, no.
No,
No.
but it gives us an opportunity to see it. It can be done within their timeline. If they have to go to the neighborhood associations, they have to do it within their timeline, which is every 3 months.
Yeah, I can see.
Yeah, so we're less of a problem than neighborhood associations.
There's a similar process for the Historic Review Board, which is a decision-making body, where they have a design advice meeting, which is sort of informal, and they get to show the preliminary design to the Historic Review Board, and then based on that guidance, they'll come in and they'll do a formal review and hearing. So, but that is on the record.
However, they are, they can make decisions. We
Right.
can't.
Yeah, it's different. So, in any event, your bylaws say that you can comment on land use applications that have the potential to significantly affect natural resources, which we've taken to mean anything within the natural resource overlay district or a policy affecting natural resources. So, yeah.
Well, I think one of the
we can talk
reasons for
about it.
this entire request
Yeah.
is because right now, obviously, any one of us can comment on anyone that's been out individually. But based on our current structure, it's very difficult for us to develop a position as a committee.
Right, and the
And I
timing
think,
is
aren't you
not.
saying, Doug, that's
conducive.
might be where we want to be sometimes,
Well, yes.
with a position.
Yeah, with a conversation and making suggestions if they're warranted. Yeah.
Yeah, but we might want to write a letter or something.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, at this point in time, it's pretty hard as a committee to get together and write a letter.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah. So it's definitely something we should all be thinking about and starting putting ideas down on paper. And we can help out because we know how these codes are written and some of the nuances that have come out of the neighborhood association meeting requirement. For example, if a neighborhood association cannot or will not meet with a developer within 30 days, the code entitles them to have their own meeting, provided they provide notice to the neighborhood association
Within the
in a
30-day period,
location.
usually won't be a problem for us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are things that we can help with. Okay. And we probably want to put this again on the agenda fairly shortly.
I'm just going to make a request that doesn't apply to anybody here, but does apply to people that aren't. I'm not hearing people that are, I should say, some people I'm not hearing from that they're not going to attend the meeting, and I assume you're not hearing about it either. Neither of the two people that are absent have informed me that they'd be absent.
Oh, sorry.
Did
Yeah, I
you?
did get a notification from Jerry, yeah.
Okay, from Jerry, okay. And so.
He said he called you too, but
Yeah.
I don't know if it was short notice.
Okay, well, that's fine when that happens, and there's another person I haven't heard from either.
Yeah, I didn't hear from them.
Okay, and it's been more than one meeting, so.
Okay.
So I think I'll be communicating with the individual then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Well, it's
that one.
short, and we'll go through our communications. I'll start from my left.
No communications, but I know Arbor Day and Earth Day are coming up pretty quickly. I don't think the NRC has any direct involvement in any activities in Oregon City, but
That's a good point.
it'd be great to get any. I don't think I've received notice of any
No.
activities in the city, but
We haven't
keeping an
got
eye
a
out for
date. The mayor needs to do, we need to find a date, we need to do the proclamation. The Parks Department will be handling most of the resource and location issues. What planning helps with is the publicity and the logistics and making sure that it meets the Arbor Day Foundation's requirements. And how is it coordinated with Earth Day as well? Because in the past, they've done them simultaneously with the cleanups. But last year, we did a separate planting over at the
right,
Wesleyan Park, which was really well attended. So I think it's going to get better and better.
good.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and then I would like to encourage greater involvement next year with the NRC as a committee for planning and participating in activities. But this year, look forward to participating as a citizen.
Yeah, I've been out of town, so I don't have anything.
Well, Matt, in your request, the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council will welcome your participation in invasive plant removal on April 21st.
April 21st.
Yeah, April 21st at Abernathy Creek Park. We're going to have, we always had members of the junior ROTC from the high school coming. But there's work to do, and so anybody that's interested in participating in that event, that'd be great.
Sign me up.
And that's my communication.
That's cool. Bring the gloves.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to add tonight.
I don't have anything either.
Okay. All right, well, I have a few things. I mentioned the Metro grant application. Currently, we have staffing. If we were to get a grant for any one of those three or all three, we only have staffing realistically to complete one of those in a given year. So that's something to bear in mind. we will be moving community development to our new or refurbished location at the annex at Mount Pleasant on April 21st.
Oh,
Yeah, it's coming up.
May I inquire, because I would presume that building was not built in a period where we have the seismic requirements we do now.
Right.
Were you able to do some retrofitting?
I don't know that the planning division is one of those locations that has to be seismically upgraded because it's on.
Well,
it's
I'm
not
talking
a
about
critical facility.
general code in terms,
Yeah.
I mean, the
Well,
White
yeah, I
House,
mean,
for example.
I don't know all the details of what the permit entails, but as far as the tenant improvements, but
I'm going to
yeah.
share a piece of information.
Yeah.
I belong to a book club, and we invited Scott Burns to our book club, who is one of the authors of Catastrophes on the Columbia, the Missoula Floods. And he was talking about, he talks about anything dealing with geology. It was a great meeting. But he was making, there are two major earthquakes we suffer from. One is the southern part of the fault. The other is the whole fault going. The whole fault goes every 500 years or so. The southern fault goes every 200, 300 years, and it's been about that long for that, and that's going to create a seismic 8, whereas the whole fault going is seismic 9 or more. And so we would probably experience a fair amount of loss in Oregon City because of all the old housing that we do have, and Main Street would this masonry stuff would be probably really subject to damage. And that was my reason for asking the question.
Yeah.
He informed me that, and he's working on it in a short period of time, there will be one of these emergency apps like that comes out on an Amber Alert, except it'd be a very noisy noise on your cell phone.
Oh.
And he indicated that if, in terms of the southern part of the fault, in Portland area, we'd have time for a 5-minute notification. That's all being monitored, so people could get out of their houses, get out of the structures, and get out of the tree falling zone. And that would be enough time once that's out there.
Yeah.
Seattle would have about 10 minutes notification. There are
Phenomenal.
3 waves that are produced by an earthquake. 2 of them move quickly and are generally not detected except by barking dogs.
I had a cat. I had a cat that woke my daughter up before the spring earthquake, freaking out.
And the last one, which is the surface wave, the S wave, is a slower, of course, more damaging wave, but so those things can be picked up because of those.
Oh, yeah, we've had birds, pet birds that picked them up.
Yeah. So,
I think they have that alert system in Mexico. That's been in, before the last earthquake, there were people that had warning and got out of the buildings before a lot of them collapsed.
So that's something that's going to be happening, but I was hoping that you'd retrofit it to some degree.
I don't know all the details, Doug, to be perfectly honest.
But you're going to be in there.
Well,
Where is it? Where's Mount Pleasant Annex?
It's, as your Mount Pleasant is where Mount Pleasant School is. It's the intersection of Warner Parrott,
There's a-
and all those. That's
At
that location.
Yeah.
I was wondering what that was.
it's where the classroom is in the front, the more
one that's all
modern
construction.
building.
Okay, yeah.
My grandson's in preschool there right now,
Yeah,
so.
but the public, the police department facility obviously would be brand new seismic up to code. But I'll report back on that.
Yeah.
My age, I don't worry about stuff like that.
Well, some of those old houses aren't even tied down to their foundation.
I know.
My presumption that this is going to be, you have it tied down.
Well, I'll check with Mike Robertson tomorrow morning.
Foundation, what are you talking about? They barely have foundations. I could tie it down, it wouldn't do any good.
Work from home.
I mean, one of the worst things would be the planning department which sets up codes on how houses are to be built. The building goes down in an earthquake, what am I going to tell you?
Do as I do, not as I
Have you
say.
ever been in an electrician's house?
I have, but
I've seen all the wires dangling.
So other items. Next, March 21st, City Commission agenda, the McLaughlin-Kenema Trail Plan. First reading of the hearing approving that and adopting that is on the agenda. On that agenda also is approval of a grant request to improve Filbert Run Park, and that's $396,000 grant request to the State Parks Foundation, I believe. Doug, you probably know
I
us.
think it's right.
With the matching funds from the city from system development charges, $804,000. And if the grant funds are awarded, the project will be completed by calendar year 2020. And I believe that includes enhancement of the natural resource overlay district portion of that park.
An intermittent stream flows through it.
Yeah, intermittent, yeah. Equitable housing project update. So we've had 3 meetings of our project advisory team and technical advisory team. It's a pretty daunting project in terms of the amount of material that we're asking this committee to look over. And it is a fairly ambitious project with some fairly progressive proposals in terms of ways to add and diversify and get more housing for more different income types in the city. And we're going to be presenting to the Citizen Involvement Council just an interim update that I'll be giving on the April 2nd, and also to the Planning Commission and City Commission and meetings in April, just to let them know what they can expect. We would be having the open houses in July for that, and June and July, and then going into public hearings July, August, September. So, and that's moving along. Okay, so Matt, you talked about Arbor Day, thanks. We just were awarded our 6th year for Tree City USA, and we got another growth award. So in order to get a growth award, you have to do something above and beyond the standard things. And we did do that because we've had some success working with Friends of Trees and then several other programs that the Public Works Department has been looking at. We're also qualifying factors in that in terms of stream shading and that sort of thing. So that was good. Just to note that PGE is planning to apply a growth regulator to specific trees in sites beneath their power lines. They're hoping to apply these growth regulating synthetic hormones in Oregon City in the next 1 to 2 weeks. The reason why is they're trying to limit the foliage growth on these trees. And apparently this hormone is, when applied to the soil at the base of the tree has more available energy to increase root structure and networks, increase defensive, and create a stronger tolerance to drought. So there's more information about this product. It's called Shortstop on the website, and the sites that they've selected so far are along South End Road near the intersection with Lafayette Avenue, along First Street near the Orthopedic Center, and along South Myers Road near Frontier Parkway.
Now, what's their objective again?
I think what they're trying to do is reduce the rate of growth in the canopy of the trees
That are below the power lines?
that are either in the power lines or below the power lines. Yeah. And so they have an arborist forestry staff. The guy that I've been talking to is Matthew Villela. He's very good person to talk to. I think he'd be willing to come and talk to you guys about this. but if you have questions for him,
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea.
yeah, because it's an ongoing program.
Yeah, it says it controls growth in the crown by up to 90%.
Yeah,
Less pruning.
I've never heard of it before.
No, I haven't either.
Yeah,
Usually they just remove trees.
Yeah, usually.
yeah. Well, maybe this is something change of policy.
It might be positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It creates a vegetative base, which is
Yeah, it's
good.
not killing it, yeah.
Okay, so status of the Metro New Creek Canyon project. Right now, it's this approval is in a draft form. We've given the draft approval to Metro to review along with the conditions of approval for that. Once they review those conditions of approval, we will issue a formal approval and they will be able to schedule and cost out their first year of improvements. And we don't know when that's going to happen yet. But as I understand it, the very first phase of the project will be to work on the day use area and parking lot at the end of Fox Lane and begin the trail system. And then the actual process of enhancement in the canyon is going to take several years for them to complete and continue to monitor over time. And we'll know more in April. And we just received and provided public notice for an update to the sewer plant. We're adding a digester. They'd always planned to add a digester to improve their solids handling facility.
This is
West, yeah, across there.
water.
And that is within the NROD buffer existing impervious area, but they're slightly increasing the amount of impervious area, so they have to do the full natural resource impact analysis and mitigation on that one. And they'd be doing on-site mitigation and improvement adjacent to the trail and in back of the trail and next to where the existing storm pond is. But there's plenty of area for them to actually come in and improve that habitat. And that's all I have.
And I'm pretty sure I'm right on this, the neighborhood, I presume South End, Hazel Grove Westing Farm Neighborhood Association will be having a meeting tomorrow night.
Tomorrow?
On the Felbert Run.
Okay.
I believe it's at 7 o'clock at the United Methodist Church on South End Road. I'm planning to go to it because I live in that neighborhood. The park's only 2 blocks away from me.
I thought of something, checking my notes, that you might be interested in. March 20 is closing arguments on the Waterboard Park trial. 1:30 p.m.
Oh, okay.
So
Where are they?
County Court. On Main.
Okay.
Could be interesting.
Yeah, I don't have anything else.
I don't think I'll go do that.
So, future agenda items. Do you guys have anything that we haven't discussed? What we've talked about is ongoing discussion about developer meetings for applications in the NROD. We'll probably have some presentations of it for the next meeting on city projects, possibly updates on the public works facility.
Right.
Yeah.
If you can do it early enough to have the one gentleman coming in from, is it PG again?
Oh, yeah,
Or-
Matthew Villela, PGE.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll ask him. Anything else? Okay. Well, if anything does come up, send me a note. Thank you. Good to be back.
Yes, I did.
Welcome.
Did you want to come back?
Oh, yeah.
Took him a minute.
Yeah, you had to think.
Let's see, wife,
Yeah, it's a public record.
dogs, work. Yeah, I was ready to come back. It's a beautiful country, though. Yeah. I will, I'll send you some links to the photos.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
That'd be cool,
See 'em.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks.